Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. The big news, obviously, Steve Bannon, contempt. Grand jury laid out a contempt charge. Will this mean he will see the inside of a hearing room? Actually, I don't care as long as he sees the inside of a jail cell. That's kind of where I'm at this point. I want to see all of these criminals from January 6th and all of the run-up to that day and all the cover-up and all of the people who are still perpetuating the big lie that there was all this fraud and all this theft going on. I want to see these folks. I want to see them locked up. Also, former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. He formerly missed his day in deposition. He was subpoenaed to come before the January 6th commission this morning, failed to do so. He now risks being held in contempt of Congress, like Steve Bannon. And look, at the end of this is one of these moments where if it's you, if it's me, if it's average, everyday working people, they drag them in there and they sit them in the seat. Now, you have the right to plead the fifth, and Steve Bannon can do that. And I fully expect that he will. But you got to be in the seat. And this is where, now that the Department of Justice has gone in this direction, I think we should be seeing a lot more of this. And I want to see people, I do. I want to see them lined up in jail. I want to see them perp walked into the jail. And every time they refuse a subpoena, and we keep subpoenaing them again and again and again until they sit in the seat. That's how it works. If you or me, we miss it, they come get us. Just because they've got wealth and power and connections, they shouldn't get away with it. It's that simple. And, the thing is we're in this weird kind of moment because all of this information that we've known for a long time is now there's more documents coming out and more reporters who are holding on to stories because they had to write their books, which is, just, I don't know. I get you want your piece of the economic pie. I get that it's about the money, but if you're one of the reporters who at the time knew this stuff was going on, I got to tell you, I have problems with holding on to the story for months. For instance, we're now finding out that Trump did everything that they could do to, to stop common sense at the beginning of the pandemic. And now we knew this. We knew from the beginning he did everything he could do to minimize it. He did everything he could do to distract. He did everything he could do to, don't worry about it. It's going to go away. It's only 15 cases. The heat will come and it'll disappear like magic. If we just pour bleach on it, it'll be fabulous. We're now finding that, these new documents are saying just how much interference Trump and his team did to the CDC. And how badly they tried to hamper them at the beginning. And a lot of the stuff that's come out, and this is, I have people, Fauci and the CDC made these bad choices. Yeah, because they were trying to deal with Trump and all of the political operatives in his administration. They're trying a balancing act. And now that you go back and you look at some of these documents and some of these reports coming out, you go, it's amazing it's amazing it wasn't worse. We also find out, January 6th, you've got, the crowd chanting, hang Mike Pence. We find out that Pence's access cards to the White House and to secure buildings didn't work. Gee, I wonder how that happened. I wonder who ordered it. But you got Trump, defending the people who are chanting, hang him. Because, they were people were angry. It's common sense. And then went, into the whole big lie. He would have sacrificed Mike Pence to hold on to his position. There's no question. No question. And the fact that Pence and his group of supporters haven't been screaming from the top of the mount about how they were basically, almost sacrificed is amazing to me. But here's the thing, given all of this stuff that's coming out, all this stuff we know, all of the stuff that's going to come out here in the near future, all of the stuff that the January 6th Commission's working on, the Republican messaging machine is still kicking the snot out of Democrats. I mean, the messaging machine that they have built is second to none. Because I still have people telling me, no, they stole the election, Rick, don't you know? And you go, well, point to something. Well, election night, Donald Trump was up 600,000 votes in Pennsylvania. You go, yeah, because they only counted half the votes. That's what happens, and that's what was told to you from the beginning. We knew this. But again, the Republican machine, as powerful as they are, they inoculated against truth and reality and in fact. They got people to believe that on election night, it was over. We didn't need to count those mail-in ballots. Didn't need to do any of that. It's just those people, those Democrats' votes. We don't need to count that. We already know who won. And they started telling people, look, months earlier, that what's going to happen is he's going to win, and then the Democrats are going to steal it. As we count the votes, the Democrats are going to steal the election. And these folks, these geniuses, bought it. And that's the weird part of this. If there's no... They talk about common sense, not so common. But I look at this and I go, at some point, the messaging machine has got to get better. You've got to do a better job of telling the story. And these subpoenas are I think, going to be a little helpful, especially as more Republicans refuse to step forward. Because if you're a Republican, you got to ask yourself, why wouldn't they? If it were the patriotic event that they're telling us it was, if this was the big steal, if this was everything that they claim, wouldn't this be the stage for you to lay your cards on the table and have that, that big boy moment where you get to put the four aces down king high? Isn't that moment? The reality is they're not holding a pair. And they know it. It's all a sham. And they're going to do whatever they can do to cover up, to hide, and then to deflect. Because this is what they do masterfully. This is the game plan. And this is why they win so always. Because it's easy to make stuff up. It's easy to lie. It's easy to be, them. Because facts don't matter. Because you're this is the part that just is wow. I have people that I talk to who don't believe anything is true. So if you believe in no facts other than what you yourself believe, and then you can make those facts up, then how do you have truth and justice and the rule of law? How do you do any of that stuff? I'm interested to see what happens with these subpoenas because there are a bunch of them. Now that Bannon has been found in contempt of Congress, what's that going to mean? Will he see the inside of a jail cell? Will he be forced to testify? And if they break him, do the levees break? And then do the rats start scurrying, looking for the exits, looking for their way to save themselves? I don't know. But I'll tell you this, the Republican machine is quite impressive. It really is. They top to bottom, total coordination, everyone on message, nobody deviating. They own talk radio. They own the internet. They own the Twitters. They own social media because they spend time, money, energy coordinating across lines, to get the messaging that they want to put out there. And look, I give them credit. They spin every issue. They get the first spin on everything so that, Democrats are fighting on their turf. Look at the last election. Nowhere in Virginia are they teaching critical race theory. None of the people who were screaming about the theory of race that's critical could even explain what it really was and how it was affecting their children and if their children had... Nobody. There was nothing. And yet that was one of the most important issues. because their messaging machine kept pounding it in there. Because it's all about fear and smear. And if you can lie enough and you can tell the biggest lie and you can get people to believe it and be afraid of it, wow, that's powerful. For instance, Congressman from Utah put out what I thought was a great list of Biden's Build Back Better plan. He has it, the Democrats' Build Back Better laundry list. And he said it was the laundry list of socialism. And you go, the climate crisis, $550 billion. Is that socialism? Child care, universal pre-K, $400 billion. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. We need it. According to our Utah congressman, socialism. Expanding child and earned income tax credit, helping the working poor, something that Republicans used to believe in, especially considering the earned income tax credit is my favorite, by the way, my favorite right-wing talking point, because they don't know that it was Ronald Reagan who first passed the earned income tax credit. It came out of Uncle Milty's negative tax, something that Milton Friedman had dreamt up back in the 60s, which was to give universal basic income to every person in this country. I'm almost speechless at the idiocy of this congressman putting this out. This part especially, we're now calling this socialism, even though it was the sainted Ronald Reagan, the capitalist Ronald Reagan, and the free enterprise economist Milton Friedman who dreamt it up. Now, all of a sudden, the goalposts have shifted, and now it's communism, socialism, ismism. It's all that. He goes on, expanding Medicare and the Affordable Care Act subsidies, $300 billion, more socialism, according to him. Medicare hearing benefit, $35 billion, more socialism, according to him. In-home access to care, $150 billion. That's to keep Granny in her home when she needs a little assistance. Instead of dumping her in a nursing home at 15 times the cost, you keep her in her home, you give her a little help to make meals, to clean up, move her around a little bit, better quality of life, better longevity, lower cost, socialism. It is what it is. Affordable housing, because hey, we did it in the 50s, must have been socialism. Worker training and higher education, $40 billion, again, more socialism. And other spending, $90 billion, which totals up to $1.75 trillion. In my view, what is important spending, important investment in the future of this country and in the human capital of our nation. But according to this congressman from Utah, socialism. And what that word's meant to do is to get the faithful, the flock, the sheeple, to get them to, all foaming at the mouth and all bunched up in the panties, so that they put blinders on and they don't look at any of the stuff that I just listed. The universal preschool for people's kids, child care help, so families can have parents who work, have good quality, affordable child care, so they're not worried about their children. Expanding the earned income tax credit so that families, low-wage families, can survive. And also reward work. Again, you go back to these what used to be conservative principles. This used to be the heart of conservatism. Family values. Take care of Granny, take care of your children, help families, is now, according to this congressman, socialism. Because he knows that, nobody knows what socialism is. Socialism to the right is whatever they can shove into the boogeyman. And where they shove it in the boogeyman. I mean, this is just, it's insane. But their messaging vehicles are so much better. This is, for me, one of these great graphs that Democrats should be going, yes, this is what we want to do. This is who we are. This is, yes, do this. And then get people to go, no, we don't want help for our children. We don't want help for our grandparents. We don't want help for ourselves when we get older. We don't need to address climate change. No, let the grandkids fry. Better messaging. Better messaging, Democrats. Get out there, ball up the little fists. Little balls, the knuckles, they bend inward, keep the thumbs on the outside. Throw a punch every once in a while. Because this stuff is good stuff. All the other side has against you are lies and distortion, half-truths, and fear. Now, I know that works, but you got to sell what the future could look like. Because right now, all we're hearing about is inflation. Inflation's bad. Inflation's bad. And yeah, we were going to get inflation no matter what because of the period that we're in. It's going to happen. The question is, how do we respond to it? We've got to do something about our supply chains. That's going to take investment. That's going to take a Congress that's willing to be active. The invisible hand, not going to fix this one. Sorry. The invisible hand is not going to come and make everything better. This is going to take actual hands and feet and backs and minds and everybody working together to clear up our port problem, one. But more importantly to me, reshoring some of that manufacturing, bringing those jobs back. Because if we learned anything from just-in-time inventory, is that, well, when something hiccups, things start to shut down. I'll be honest, I'm surprised we're not worse off than we are right now. Most people I talk to are doing pretty well in the economy, paying a little bit more than they want to for gas. Food prices are going up. Prices are going up. But most people I know are doing okay. And if we can do a little bit more to help those at the bottom to do a little bit better, maybe we all do better. But here's the thing. You know who's doing wildly well? Folks at the top. Our billionaire class. Those 745 USDA certified billionaires. The ones who pocketed an additional $2.1 trillion during this pandemic. The ones who go on Twitter and say, hey, should I sell some of my stock so I can pay some taxes? Because maybe you might need that money to, I don't know, for healthcare or education or roads or bridges or something. We have a chance to do all of those things and more if we just got out of our own way. And stop with the big lies. And, well, in my view, start holding some of those bums accountable. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1954. That was the day Ellis Island closed its doors. More than 12 million immigrants had passed through its gates since it opened in 1892. Those steerage and third-class passengers coming to America were processed at the island between 1892 and 1924. They were routinely subject to medical inspections to determine they were free of disease. Legal inspections included questions regarding birth, occupation, destination, finances, and criminal record. The busiest year was 1907, with more than 1 million arriving to enter the United States. During World War I, the island was used as a detention center for presumed enemies and those considered foreign-born subversives. After Congress passed the Restrictive Immigration Act of 1924, arrivals entering the country slowed to a trickle. Then, Ellis Island became primarily a detention and deportation center. During World War II, thousands of Germans, Italians, and Japanese made up the majority of those detained awaiting deportation. It also served as a military hospital for returning servicemen and training center for the Coast Guard. By 1950, Ellis Island served as a holding center for arriving communists and fascists who were prevented entrance under the recently passed Internal Security Act. A Norwegian seaman who had overstayed his leave was released the day the island closed and told to catch the next ship back to Norway. In 1965, President Johnson made Ellis Island part of the National Park Service. A massive restoration of the island began in 1984, organized by Lee Iacocca's Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. It reopened as the Ellis Island Immigration Museum in 1990, featuring numerous exhibits, publicly accessible immigration records, and the award-winning film documentary Island of Hope, Island of Tears.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said at the beginning, I'm guardedly optimistic now that the Department of Justice has moved on Steve Bannon with this contempt charge. You can't let this kind of stuff go on for 4, 5, 6 years and end up not having anyone testify. This has got some immediacy to it. This has to be done now. We need, like I said, if it were you or me or any of us, we'd be sitting in that chair yesterday. And that's why I've asked my good friend Justin Hendrix to come talk with us. Justin's the editor at Tech Policy Press. He's also someone who works does some reporting over at Just Security, their website, justsecurity.org. He's got a new piece out that I want to get to. Justin, thanks for taking some time for us.
Thanks for having me tonight, Rick.
So, I'm looking at this Steve Bannon thing. Mark Meadows missed his appointment today, hoping tomorrow we'll see something coming after him. But is this a big deal with Bannon, this contempt charge?
I think just exactly what you said in the opening is right, which is, finally, it seems like there might be some consequences for absolutely refusing to participate in a congressional investigation. And it is good that the DOJ has sent this message that Congress's request, subpoena, has to be honored, and that we need the answers to the questions that this committee intends to put forward.
Yeah, I mean, is this? There have been a lot of people beating up on Merrick Garland that he's not strong, not strong enough. He's not active enough. Does this quell some of that, or is he still viewed as kind of a wimp?
Well, listen, from what I saw today, Merrick Garland has, absolutely done what is appropriate and within the law. And, in his news release, I know, he said very strongly that this commitment is about showing the American people that the department is going to follow the facts and follow the law and pursue justice. And that's what's going on here.
Yeah. Now Mark Meadows missed his. There was no doubt in my mind he was not showing up today. I mean, that's not a surprise. Do you see the same path for Meadows, or is it a little more difficult since Meadows was a part of the administration, whereas Bannon was not?
Absolutely. And, I think this does send a shot over the bow there. The committee has issued a statement on Meadows' situation and clearly, intend to kind of pursue him and make certain that he sits before the committee as well. And they had some, pretty harsh words for him today. They say he's, choosing to defy the law, that this defiance, if it persists, that, it's going to have repercussions. So let's hope that Mark Meadows will have a change of heart. I suspect Mark Meadows is maybe slightly different in orientation than Steve Bannon. May fear the result of this sort of contempt situation in a way that Bannon might not.
Yeah, I think Bannon wants to be the martyr, and he's going to do everything he can do, even if it means him going to jail. Whereas I think Meadows, a politician, he's going to try and maybe negotiate himself out of something. But I see Bannon as somebody who wants to burn things down. Well, the fact is, he said he wants to burn the whole system down. So I don't even have to think that he wants it. He's already said it.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't listen to it myself. I've only seen tweets about this, but apparently tonight he started his War Room podcast, talking through the situation and basically said, look, there's no whining, no tears in the War Room. So he intends to kind of, I think play the strong man here and suggest that he's going down for the cause.
No, just as long as he goes down, because at the end of the day, we got to get to the truth here. We got to get to the bottom of this. And for me, the other part of this is not just Bannon and Meadows and the Trump cabal, but members of Congress. When you've got sitting members of Congress who you are aiding and abetting these people, I think that has to come out as well. And I want to see them subpoenaed. I want to see them being forced to testify what they did, where they were, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a really crazy day for news about January 6th, if you think about it. We started the day with the exclusive on Axios about Jonathan Karl's new book, with the audio that was spreading around the internet today. Donald Trump essentially justifying the chance to hang Mike Pence on January 6th, sort of suggesting that he understood the crowd's motivation and why they were upset. The situation as it was, and in his mind, that the vote had been stolen and people were seeking redress. So, of course they would be upset. It really extraordinary. I mean, to hear this former president say those words, I remain shocked by things like that, despite the fact that he proves himself at every opportunity. But then to end the day with Steve Bannon, his former chief advisor, facing having to turn himself in, I think, as early as Monday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays itself out. But again, I go back to those members of Congress who did, the Boberts, the Greens, Josh Hawleys, all of them, the Jim Jordans, the Mo Brooks. And I know you guys over at Just Security have done a really intensive deep dive into all of the things that Mo Brooks has done over the course of this period. Why is Brooks important in this?
Well, there's been some recent reporting, and some of your listeners have probably seen the reporting in Rolling Stone about the role of various organizers in January 6th and communications that they claim to have had with members of Congress, including Mo Brooks. But then, of course, I guess somewhat famously in the lore of January 6th, the Stop the Steal organizer, Ali Alexander, claimed that Mo Brooks, the Republican from Alabama, was one of three congressmen, along with Paul Gosar, also in the news this week for some unfortunate content related to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then also Andy Biggs. Those three sort of helped to plan the events of January 6th, and that the idea was to put pressure on Congress while they were voting in order to rally more Republicans against certification of the Electoral College votes. And so, we really looked at everything that Mo Brooks had said for about a year and a half, and really delved into his mind and his mindset and what might have been motivating him.
No, and it's an incredibly deep dive into this, and we'll get links out on social media how folks can take a look at it over at justsecurity.org. But it's this kind of stuff when you put it all into place and you start looking at it in its totality. You go, how is this guy running for U.S. Senate, let alone still in the House of Representatives?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Brooks is in a particularly interesting situation. He is in a Republican primary for open Senate seat, and he has the endorsement of Donald Trump. I understand from local news reporting, though, that this primary is competitive, and so Brooks is not necessarily a shoo-in for what will happen there. But he's seeking to advance himself politically, and clearly believes that he needs the Trump base in order to do that. And so, part of his motivation, I think, for participating in the big lie and continuing to propagate it, even as late as last month, the last public statements I saw from him that were consistent with it, may well be related to that.
It's one of these things that, and looking at that Alabama race, you've got Richard Shelby, the retiring senator, who's I guess, spending $5 million of his own money trying to get the other person. I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mo Brooks is an interesting character, and I have to say what I learned reading and listening to nearly everything he said. I do think he's a true believer. In his mind, all Democrats are socialists and evil. In his mind, tens of millions of Americans who participate in elections do not deserve the right to vote. They should not be participating in our politics. In his mind, the 2020 election was stolen. And he understands the concerns that these individuals have. In fact, he drew some fire even from some fellow Republicans, this summer when there was a bomb threat at the Capitol. And the man who, was responsible for it, who was, unfortunately, I think, unwell, very clearly aligned with some of the rhetoric around the big lie. And, Mo Brooks was somewhat sympathetic to him in his statements. So not unlike Donald Trump in a way, sympathetic to these individuals and sympathetic to the instinct to violence.
Do you have any? I talk to people every day who are starting to feel hopeless that we're never going to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, especially as the right-wing media machine is rewriting the narrative every day. I mean, I have people who contact me and say, "No, Rick, you got it all wrong. It was the most patriotic day ever. This was, in Bobert's words, our 1776. This was our trifold hat moment." Is there a way back from this? Because the fear that I have is this runs into next year. Democrats get slaughtered in the next year's election, and Republicans then take over this commission and undo everything that's come out and rewrite this whole narrative.
I do not believe at any point there will be, epistemic closure in this country over January 6th. We will never agree on, as a nation, on what happened that day. But I do believe that the majority understands what happened. And look at Donald Trump's statement that came out in that audio this morning. There is no question what happened on January 6th. The president of the United States incited an insurrection against Congress and against the Constitution and against the transition of power in his own favor. And it was an extremely, extremely concerning act, the worst days in American history. The fact that there are individuals right now, whether it's Tucker Carlson or Mo Brooks or anybody else who's on that side of this question, spinning up just absolute lies and propaganda, it's extraordinary, and it's very dangerous, and it should give every American pause. I'll just add one thing to this Mo Brooks thing. If you look what the sort of evolution of his thinking, he begins to adopt, in December, a lot of the same rhetoric that you see in things like the Eastman memo, that you see the reasoning in this Claremont Institute document that was revealed recently that talked about the transition and how that might play out. This thought essentially around this independent state legislatures doctrine, this idea that the entire election had failed in several states and therefore should be rejected, and that when that happened, Republicans would have the opportunity to essentially install President Trump. That type of thinking is very dangerous, and we may see it emerge again in 2022 or 2024.
Yeah, it's something that we certainly have to be concerned about, because I have people saying that next year could be the last free and fair election we ever have, and I don't know that I'm there yet, but you've got some folks who are kind of worried about that.
Listen, there is a push all across this country to install, Bannonite or Trumpist individuals as secretaries of state positions in various states. There is an enormous grassroots movement to, install individuals who are sympathetic to these concerns across districts. And we will see what happens. I mean, I think the thing about looking at January 6th so closely is that you realize along the way that there were only a handful of individuals that really stood in the way of real chaos. And often they were, elections officials in places like Georgia and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And if they had been different in terms of their orientation, or they had taken a different decision, then things could have been much worse.
No, things could have been. And looking at statements by Brooks and others, there were people in our government who were ready to go along with the Eastman memo, who were ready to go along to sacrifice Mike Pence even if they had to. Were you surprised at the Carl stuff, the Jonathan Carl stuff, that Trump was basically defending people who wanted to hang Mike Pence?
I'm never surprised by the depths to which he'll go. I still remain. I still have inside me some degree of shock that this person was ever put in a position of power. Someone so craven and so clearly inappropriate for the role of president of the United States could possibly have been cloaked in that immense power. I don't get it, but that was certainly the case. And you look at the people that were around him, and again, having spent so much time thinking through Mo Brooks, in their mind, they have kind of come to this conclusion that this was the right way to think about things. This is the right way to do things. An incredible amount of motivated reasoning, extraordinary amount of just absolute manufactured reality. And that's something that I think Donald Trump, people like Mo Brooks, are certainly willing to do, simply to manufacture falsehoods in order to remain in power.
Yeah, and look, they're I give them credit. They're masters at social media. They have figured out how to have a much bigger microphone. Their media is by far better than the rest of everyone else. Is there any hope? I mean, you're a guy who's someone I look to as almost an expert in social media and messaging. Is there hope for the Democratic Party in coming back and countering the kind of narrative switch that we're seeing?
One of the reasons I am so interested in Brooks, and I am interested in people like Jim Jordan, and I'm interested in other elites who have pushed the big lie and propagated that, is I am very interested in how the relationship between political elites, between individuals, grassroots individuals out there in the world who are propagating their messages, how that all came together on January 6th. That is certainly a prism to look at the problems of American politics through. And I think that we're going to see that same, stew of actors come together again and again, unfortunately, in 22 and 24. But I am optimistic. I think the main thing that the Democrats have to sort of figure out how to do in terms of countering falsehoods is, how to recognize that they're not playing with an opponent on some level that is ever going to cede that something is false. That's simply not going to happen. And so kind of playing to that is absurd, which is one of the reasons, coming back to it, why I think the Department of Justice has made the right decision. I'm glad to see the committee taking the actions that it's taking. It seems to be sort of saying, listen, we're not going to argue about this. Either you're going to come, you're going to provide your testimony, and you're going to provide us with the truth, or there will be consequences. And at the end of the day, that's what the legal system is for. That's what the rule of law is for.
That is absolutely what we need. Justin, I appreciate the time and the work that you do. I hope folks will take a look at your piece on Mo Brooks over at justsecurity.org, a timeline of Brooks's January 6th efforts to overturn our election. We'll get links out on social media how folks can take a look at that. But as always, great talking with you. Keep up the great work, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Good stuff, Justin Hendrix. If you got any thoughts, questions, comments, something in your mind, shoot us an email, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1995. That was the day that healthcare workers in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, walked off the job in a wildcat strike. Budget cuts in Alberta, under the leadership of Premier Ralph Klein, had hit healthcare particularly hard. A massive restructuring plan called for deep cuts, privatization, and reducing services. As part of this trend, the Calgary Regional Health Authority had decided to contract out the work of 120 laundry personnel. The workers were members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 8. The laundry workers walked off the job in protest. Soon, they were joined in solidarity on the picket line by housekeepers, orderlies, nurses, and other hospital workers. 8 hospitals across the city were impacted by the walkout. Community members joined in and marched on the picket lines, frustrated by the government cuts. Twice, the Labor Relations Board ordered the workers to go back to their jobs. Twice, the workers refused. The strike spread to Calgary, where more than 2,500 healthcare workers walked off the job. In Edmonton, workers stood ready to strike. Talk of a general strike began to circulate. In Calgary, the union met with management for a 19-hour marathon bargaining session, and the
10-day strike ended. The health authority agreed to wait 8 months before contracting out any labor. Workers were given severance packages, and the government stopped any further cuts to the industry. But the settlement did little to appease the dissatisfaction of the healthcare workers. The strike had also shown the potential connections between workers' issues on the job and the concerns of community members. The cutbacks hurt both labor and the general public and brought them together to stand in solidarity. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So like we said, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that something comes of it. I'm hoping that they start perp walking a bunch of these criminals. Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Trader Green, Josh Hawley, the rest of Jim Jordan, the rest of them. What were you doing? Why were you doing it? Who were you doing it with? All of that. Got to get to the bottom of it. It is what it is. I saw this really bizarre story today. Above and beyond all of the craziness that we're seeing coming out of January 6th. Evidently, there's this report that came out that people, because of the vaccine mandate, are going and getting vaccinated. Yay, good job. And then this is the brilliant part of it. Then they're trying to unvaccinate themselves. It kind of reminded me of this guy I worked with years ago. He used to go to one of those snake venom churches where they would, a couple of times a year, they'd reach into a box of poisonous snakes and try and, pull out the snake and, because God's will and all that stuff. And I remember, going to him, well, is this a really good thing for a church? Because, don't you lose people? I mean, if you get, somebody's got to get bitten, and if they get bitten, do they die? He's like, oh no, we got the anti-venom and back. And you go, wait a second. If you have the anti-venom and there's no repercussion, then why go through the exercises at all? Aren't you usurping God's will? I mean, isn't the whole being bitten by the snake thing mean, God's angry with you and you're supposed to die? Isn't that part of it? And his rationale was, no, well, God wouldn't have given us the anti-venom if he didn't want us to use it. And I'm like, fair enough. This is one of those things where these people go get vaccinated, so they get the little card, we're vaccinated, and now they want to unvaccinate themselves so that they can make themselves vulnerable. So that what? I'm confused. Evidently, there's this doctor woman, because there always is. There's always some snake oil salesman who's got the grand cure, or here's the horse dewormer, or whatever. There's always someone selling the snake oil. But this woman was hysterical. I watched her little video where she's talking about how you can take detox baths. Against radiation, against pesticides, against heavy metals. All you got to do is put baking soda, Epsom salt, and I forget what the third thing was. It's a ceramic yeast or something. But evidently it takes all the radiation out of your body. All the fungus, all the yeast just sucks it right out. And if you use borax, the laundry detergent stuff that I didn't even know they made anymore. If you use borax, it takes the nanotechnology out of you. It takes the nanotechnology out of you, she says. And I'm going, wait a second, hold the phone, roll that back. I had to watch it twice just to make sure I had heard what I had actually heard. Because this is perfect. Because now not only does it get the radiation and the pesticides and the heavy metals out of your system, it gets the chip. It gets the chip because they're putting the chip in the vaccine, right? At least that's what they're telling us, the insanity that they're telling us. But this woman says you just take a bath. And now that I'm thinking about it, some of the people who I know are the anti-vaxxers, maybe a bath would help. But if you take a bath in the laundry detergent, it takes the nanotechnology out of you. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, we have really we've really, for as smart of a society as we're supposed to be, we're freaking dumb. Because there were people in this crowd cheering. It wasn't like she was just talking to herself. It wasn't like she was in a room by herself going, no, just take a bath in harsh liquids. And now none of this stuff is bad for you. Go ahead, take a bath in Epsom salt if you want. My grandmother used to soak her feet in it. Do what you got to do, whatever. But I don't know that you're going to unvaccinate yourself. I seriously doubt that, sitting in Epsom salt is going to draw the vaccine out of you. And if stupid people get vaccinated and then go, oh, I'm going to show you and I'm going to get unvaccinated, you'll see. As long as they're vaccinated, I'm okay with it. So, go ahead. I'm still trying to figure out how she's making money. Maybe she's got borax stocks that I don't know about. But for the snake oil salesman, I'm sure there's something there. Very, very, very bizarre times. I want to hit a couple of emails real quick. Douglas sent an email. Rick, do not forget that Joe Manchin takes millions every year from Exxon to block anything to promote them, having to pay for climate repair. He's doing what they pay him to do. Don't give him a pass. Nope, I've never given him a pass. Joe is who Joe is. He's a coal guy. Got to get the coal. And money's part of it. Absolutely. I also think he's stuck in his ways and no one's going to tell him what to do. Like a 2-year-old. It doesn't matter what it is. If you push, he's going to kick and scream and he's going to cause chaos. That's the unfortunate reality. And sadly, the Build Back Better plan that the Utah congressman so eloquently posted as socialism, Joe Manchin is going to vote against. So, I woke up today going, gee, is the Build Back Better plan dead yet? There will be a vote, and I do believe it will go down because, look, these are things that the working class of this country wants. We want, child care for our kids. We want, better opportunities for our children through pre-K. We would have loved to have the free college, the free community college in there as well, but nope, couldn't do that because that would make people dependent. I would love the fact to expand Medicare and Medicaid and the ACA a little bit to get people health security. It's what we should be doing, and it's popular. People want it. But that's probably why we're not going to get it, because people want it. But no, Joe Manchin will not get a pass. And for me, Joe Manchin's on my you-know-what list anyway. After he came out yesterday and said, we're not going to pass the electric vehicle subsidy for vehicles made by union workers because it's un-American. And I love the fact that, Debbie Stabenow, only took her a day later to come up with a response. But she said, quote, there's nothing more American than supporting the opportunities for workers to collectively bargain for good wages and benefits, no matter where they live and what company they work for. In fact, that's what created our middle class. She said, Senator Manchin and I worked together on many issues. I was proud to stand with him 2 years ago to help members of the UMWA union in West Virginia. At that time, some argued his bill was unfair and was picking winners and losers. But we rejected that argument and stood together to protect union pensions. She said, for this issue is no different. Standing up for hardworking Americans is always the right thing to do. Good on you, Debbie. Very happy with that. And look, that's my problem with Manchin. If it's good for him, fine. But if it's good for anybody else, and this is where Democrats got to figure out how to grease his palm a little bit. It is what it is. John sent me an email. Rick, I heard your guest yesterday talking about breaking up big corporations and using antitrust laws to do it. It appears that companies are doing it already, as GE is splitting into 3 different companies and Johnson & Johnson will be 2. Why do you think they're doing this now? Well, on the Johnson & Johnson front, I guess it'll just be Johnson and then Johnson. It will no longer be Johnson & Johnson. They're breaking into 2 companies, a consumer products division and a pharmaceutical medical device company. I would argue, without actually knowing what they've gone into, I would argue this is to shield themselves from massive lawsuits. Because if you remember right, aren't they being sued for like $1 gazillion over the baby powder that supposedly causes cancer? I would say that's the reason they're doing it. They're shielding their profitable division, pharmaceuticals and medical supplies, away from the consumer goods. And eventually they could probably just cut them off to die. That's my view. It's my view they're shielding some of their assets. Now, some companies are doing it, like Toshiba as well. The Japanese company, they're breaking themselves up, kind of doing the same kind of thing. I would argue, again, what they're trying to do, like GE, breaking up into 3 companies, they're going to end up, shedding the least profitable. This is about cutting things off to die, in my view. This isn't about breaking them up to make them more manageable and the crap that we hear. For me, this is about increasing the stock prices of the companies that they want to keep and the products that they're going to keep, and then just cutting everything else off to die. We see this happen. A lot. It just happens that this is getting some press. So that's my view. It is what it is. I got another email from where did it go? I got another email. This is from Dylan. Dylan writes, "Hi Rick, I was wondering if you would be willing to do a show that talks about why Republicans are so against unions." I'm not going to do a whole show because it's not that hard to explain. They're going to tell you they're not against unions. Every one of them, every Republican I've ever talked to said, "No, I'm not against unions. I'm just against those government unions." Teachers, and evidently policemen and firemen too, but not so much because they vote for them. But the people who provide our services, against that. Definitely, they'll tell you we're not against the construction unions. No, we're in favor of them. That's what they're going to tell you. And they're also going to tell you, well, we don't believe it. People should be forced to be in unions, because they know if you don't have the ability to make sure that everyone in your place is participating and paying dues and enforcing contracts, they know it all breaks down. Ultimately, it's about they side with business. Ultimately, unions cost more money for businesses to exist, because we know union workers make above average wages. They make 18 to 30% more in their compensation packages than non-union workers. We know that. We know overwhelmingly they have higher rates of having health insurance and good health insurance. Overwhelmingly have much higher rates of having a defined benefit pension, that they can have something when they retire. In fact, I would argue that in the non-union sector, there are no more defined benefit pensions. I've yet to have someone say, "Yeah, I work for such and such a company. We don't have a union and we have a defined benefit pension." Those have all been eviscerated. What we get now are these crappy defined contributions, where if you put a couple dollars in, maybe we'll put a couple of pennies in, and maybe there'll be something at the end of the road for you. Now, I remember back in the 80s, we were sold on the idea that the pension was going to be, we're going to be millionaires. You work 30 years for a company, we'll put all this money in, and by the end of it, you're going to have $1 million, you're going to be rich. And I remember when someone told me that the first time, I go, look, they're never going to let a dump truck driver have $1 million. They're not. It's not going to happen. And it hasn't. Most people have about $18,000. That's the average in these defined contribution plans. Some people have done really well. The majority, the folks who haven't been able to put money aside because their wages haven't kept up, they've got virtually nothing. And we're heading towards a retirement crisis, especially for my generation, Gen X, and the millennials are really screwed because there's nothing for them at the end. And now Social Security has become our only real retirement plan, and that hasn't kept up either. So the reality is Republicans are against unions for the sole reason is it inflates costs for corporations. Corporations don't want it. They will tell you that it harms flexibility for corporations because they have to negotiate with unions before they, fire a bunch of people, before they move to Mexico, before they, whatever. Slash wages or slash benefits. They don't like that. They don't like having to negotiate. They don't like having to be tied to something. Yet every CEO in this country has a contract. They have a labor contract. When Robert Nardelli was fired from Home Depot didn't write him a check for $210 million out of the goodness of their heart. They wrote it to him because he had a contract. And this is one of those things where just on a common sense level, I don't care what you do, from garbage man to this guy swinging a hammer to somebody driving a truck to sitting in the corner office shuffling papers around. Every person needs a written labor contract. Know what's expected of you, know what's expected of the company, know how things dissolve, know how you solve problems, how you handle grievances, all of that stuff. And the fact that there are people who go, no, we don't need such a stinking thing, is beyond my ability to comprehend. So I hope that explains it a little bit. Now I have my friend Joe Walsh, the former congressman from Illinois, who comes on occasionally. He'll tell you, I'm all in favor of people joining unions, but they should do it because they want to. Because what he knows is in a workplace where maybe half the people are in and half the people aren't, you have a division. And as soon as you can divide the workforce, you can conquer them. That simple. And I have people say, well, I should have the choice not to join a union. You do have the choice not to unionize. You have a choice not to work in a union facility. You have the choice to go somewhere else. That's simple. But when you talk about that choice, no. I can't do that. But I hope he answers that question. Also, got an email from Sandy. Sandy asked if I had seen the story of the great quitting and how everyone is quitting their jobs this September. And yeah, I saw the story. Evidently, September turned out to be the biggest month of people quitting their jobs. The biggest month of people quitting their jobs in the history of the country. And according to the job openings and labor turnover survey, so what was it? The number was just obscenely high, like 164,000 people in that month up and quit their jobs. And, it was quite remarkable that there were that many folks who ended up quitting. And you go, how is that possible? How is it possible so many people ended up leaving their jobs? And it just was what it was. Now, what they're saying is there were 56,000 people who quit in the arts, which seems like a lot. 47,000 people left other service jobs, and 30,000 people left state and local education, government, and things like that. The 47,000 leaving, service sector jobs, I guess that seems low to me. Now that doesn't take into account that August was a huge month as well, and I would argue that the reason we're seeing all these people quitting, the reason that we're seeing the kind of departure is that people are fed up with the crappy jobs. And look, we're seeing all these strikes going on. I would argue if those people had a labor contract, if those people had the ability to go on strike, if those folks worked in facilities where there were unions to represent them, that they would be going on strike, not quitting. And that would be a huge number. Because understand, there's only about 6% of the private sector workforce who are members of labor unions. You double that, you triple that, you put it back to where when I started working, when it was 25% union density. Now you're talking some striking. Anyway, got lots to get to. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1996. That was the day that Chainsaw Al Dunlop lived up to his nickname. Under his leadership, the board of the Sunbeam Corporation agreed to eliminate half of the company's 6,000 employees and 87% of all its products. Dunlop had built a reputation for ruthlessly restructuring companies. His policy of implementing sweeping layoffs and plant closures earned him the nickname Chainsaw Al. In the mid-1990s, the company had several quarters of profits below projections. They decided to bring in Chainsaw Al. The day after he was announced as the CEO, Sunbeam's stock soared 60% just 3 days after taking the job. Dunlop declared to reporters, "We've got too many people, too many products, too many facilities, and too many headquarters." He brought in consultants to review the company's operations and recommend
drastic cuts. The resulting cuts were so severe that Sunbeam could not fill production orders. Despite this, Dunlop continued to promise record profits. Sunbeam's stock continued to rise, by 1997 hitting a record of $50 a share. But the revenue reports were actually a result of Dunlop's creative accounting. In June of 1998, the house of cards came crashing down. Sunbeam's board met to discuss the company's woeful finances. Just 2 years after Chainsaw Al was brought into the company, he was fired. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission investigated what happened at Sunbeam and banned Chainsaw Al from ever holding another CEO position. In 2001, the company filed for bankruptcy. Such chainsaw techniques are not unique to Al or Sunbeam. Cutting workers to drive up stock market value continues to be a strategy for many CEOs.
America's economic and political inequality has led workaday Americans to exclaim, "The system is broken. Let's fix it." But there's another version of this protest that I'm hearing more frequently these days. "The system is fixed. Let's break it." That certainly applies to such rigged systems as money in politics and voter suppression, but it's also relevant to seemingly mundane matters that restrain our personal freedoms. One of the insidious fixes we need to break is the claim by brand-name corporations that we consumers must be banned by law from repairing the products they sell to us. The weak battery in your cell phone, the fuel sensor in a farmer's tractor, some gizmo in the toaster you bought, a fuse in your business's truck. You could fix all of these yourself or, with a little hassle, take the problem to a local repair shop. But no, such manufacturing powerhouses as Apple, John Deere, and Panasonic assert that only their corporate technicians are authorized to open the product, which you own, to make it work again. So you are expected to deliver it to their distant facility, wait however many days or weeks they tell you, and pay an inflated price. They've literally fixed the fix for consumer products. They impose their control by making the products as needlessly complicated as possible, then claiming that the complexity is their patented proprietary product. Thus, they say they don't have to provide repair manuals or sell repair tools to consumers or independent shops. Gotcha. To give their closed profiteering system the force of law, the giants have deployed armies of lobbyists and lawyers to legislatures and courts, arguing that self-repair people really are scoundrels trying to circumvent safety and environmental rules. This is Jim Hightower saying, for action, go to U.S. Public Interest Research Group, uspurg.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Our weekly panel hour, all of the insanity, the fun, the craziness, well, where we are as a nation front and center, from the crying kid in Kenosha to what's going on down in Georgia to, hey, we finally got some infrastructure money to be spent. And, oh, by the way, we could be starting to throw some of those January 6th folks in jail for, a little bit longer than 5 minutes. About damn time. And here to go through some of the top topics of this week, I've asked our all-star panel of Rich Ojeda from No Dems Left Behind, Sarah Burris from RawStory, and Laura Packard from Healthcare Voters. Guys, thanks so much for taking time for us. So let's jump right into the middle of the craziness of this week, the Rittenhouse trial. Sense of where this is going, thoughts? Let's start with you, Laura.
Well, I think this is another opportunity to see whether justice is served in this country, whether people that murder other people get away with it or not, because the judge likes the way they look. So, are we going to hold him accountable or not?
That's an interesting question. And what's weird to me is the judge seems to, every time the prosecutor would open his mouth, to kind of just shut him up and break his flow. And it seemed like, maybe he was going to adopt the kid and end the trial right there. Sarah, your initial thoughts?
It does seem like that. It seems like the judge, there are a couple of rulings that he made that I understand why he made him. There are a bunch of other really weird, random comments that seem to come out of nowhere. At one point, the prosecution was asking him about guns and bullets, and all of a sudden the judge chimed in and started talking about different kinds of bullets. And I was like, I'm sorry, you're not a witness in this trial if you're going to be the judge. You get to be one or the other. Then today he started going off about how he hopes it wasn't Asian food for lunch because something about a boat in Long Beach. I don't understand, but this guy has a history of some weird rulings and some weird trials and some bizarre behavior, and so I am just so over this guy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Rich?
Well, I'll tell you, I have a friend of mine that's a lawyer, and he's tried many, many cases, and he's actually saying that Rittenhouse is probably going to be acquitted. It's like the deck is not stacked against him at all. It's stacked against the others. And, this judge, his actions, to actually say that you are not going to allow the people that lost their lives to be called victims, but you can call them rioters and looters and things like that. They are painting a picture. And, honestly, what I fear is that when this is over, this basically says to these white supremacists out there, this is the model that you need to use to go ahead and go out there and do what you want when you want. Yep. And you'll be able to get away with it in the court of law because we have this case to reference, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's really, really sad.
No, this is the question that I have. And the trial aside, the question is this the new normal? That if you go to a protest, you're going to have to go heavy. And if you and I get into some kind of a disagreement, you and I have words, I may just have to shoot you out of fear of you may shoot me first. Is this where we're going?
Let me tell you.
Now you're going to have body armor, right? Just to go to a protest.
No, yeah. I mean, but here, the thing that really gets me is that he walked past police officers, with an assault rifle in his hand. When do we allow civilians to just run around, especially in an event where there's violence taking place, just to run around with a weapon? This kid goes by them and they don't stop him. They don't question him. They high five him. This is absolutely sending a horrible message.
And not just an assault weapon. Like the kid bought it illegally.
Yep.
He brought it across state lines illegally. He didn't have a license for it, and then he's just carrying around the protest with police not saying one thing at all.
Yeah.
And nothing is being said about his mother. When are we going to see this mother? She's the one who drove her underage child across state lines, dropped him off with a weapon, and literally, people should be going down for this. His mother should be going down.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that she actually did that. I'm not 100% sure of that. I was under the impression he drove himself. But even still, to allow your kid to go across state lines with an AR-15, there's a problem here. And I guess you file that under anyone can have a child. You need a license to get a dog.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to talk about the judge, because I think that we don't look enough at judges in this country, that they often get elected with no competition. And that's because people really don't know. It takes a lot to get a judge out of office. If you look at the Stanford rape case, that judge was terrible and he finally did get thrown out. But there are all kinds of terrible judges all over this country, and people just don't know enough to kick them out.
No, I have a friend who's a lawyer. He says, you know what you call the last guy in your law school class? Your Honor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you right now, when I was almost murdered, the guy who hit me in the back of the head with the pipe and then broke 8 bones in my face with brass knuckles, every single time he did something that ended up in jail, he was released that day by the same damn judge.
But here, in looking at this, And this is where I want to come back to, because for me, is this the kind of society that we want to have, that we're no longer able to have these discussions, these arguments, these kind of even fights anymore. When I was a kid, you got into one of these situations, you got into a fight, you took your beating or whatever. Everything didn't end up with, I got to now execute somebody.
Yeah. I tell you right now, that's the problem that we have today is kids rarely know how to handle things. And there's nothing wrong with handling some things with your fist. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be now. It's everybody has to go grab a weapon. Everybody has to have a gun. I mean, that's the direction that it seems like we're going, and that's not the right way to be.
Yeah, and he should have never been there.
Or somebody just gets on social media and they just completely eviscerate, you and your family and everybody around you, and then the poor kid wants to kill themselves.
95% of the fights that took place when I spent 4 years in the classroom after retiring, 95% started from social media. Absolutely brutal. And these kids, you want to talk about kids being cruel? Let me tell you something. What these kids come up with social media, some of the worst things you could imagine. And it's bad.
Is this a social media problem? I mean, I look at that kid, and I'll be honest with you. I look at him, and as a parent, if my kid were going to go, hey, I'm going to go into this area where I know there's going to be violence, I know there's going to be a riot, and oh, by the way, I took my stimulus money and I bought this AR-15. I'm going to take this so I can go down and clean graffiti off a church. There is no way in hell I'm allowing my kid to go anywhere near that nightmare, let alone take an AR-15 and interject himself into any of this stuff. So you can say, look, Jeffrey Toobin's right. He's fortunate he's not on trial for being an idiot, but he is on trial for shooting and killing two people. And for me, there has to be something out of this.
This kid is going to be able to also look and speak about mental issues. I'm going to tell you right now, when I was spending 4 years as a ROTC instructor, there were students in the school that I could not give uniforms to because I could not guarantee that they wouldn't be out there the next day in the middle of the 4-lane collecting money, acting like they were sergeant majors. And I'll tell you right now, this Kyle Rittenhouse is one of those kids. I can guarantee you he was always one of the volunteer kids and all this kind of stuff. I'm telling you, he's one of those kids, and he will, in the end, if they do go against him, they're going to claim some type of mental issue, and that's going to also help him out.
One of the comments that somebody made was that this is basically the young George Zimmerman, which is exactly right. George Zimmerman could not get accepted onto the police force because he couldn't pass the mental evaluation. This is the kind of kid who, quit school, tried to get his GED, been trying to get into different firefighter programs and police programs. And that was one of the things that happened, the conversations on Wednesday when the prosecutor was questioning him, where he was like, were you a member of the fire department? And the kid actually said yes. He said he was. And it's like, no, you're a cadet where they give you a T-shirt and teach you how to do, CPR on somebody. That does not mean that you're an EMT. And the fact that he didn't understand that, or that he somehow thought that, that was a legitimate answer, it's just like, did your lawyers not prepare you for this, first of all? But really? What delusion?
The mental part about that is that I guarantee you, when he went to Kenosha, in his mind, he was going to be a hero. He was going to save people's businesses. He was going to stop the looters, and he was going to end up being hailed as a hero. And everybody would say, we want him to join our fire department and police station. Yeah, guaranteed.
No, and that's the kind of mentality that most of the people I know who have the gun fetish, that's what they talk about. And I, on the show this week, I talked about the first time I remember somebody talking about guns when I moved to Pennsylvania. I moved into a real rural area, and I'm in the lunchroom listening to this guy talk in the most pornographic of terms about this new gun that he bought, and he couldn't wait to whip it out and stick it to somebody. And it was just the most grotesque kind of fetishized moment of, I can't wait for someone to break in my house so I can kill them moment. And I looked at him when he was done, and I go, you are the last person on this planet who should be allowed to have a gun.
Yeah, but that's how a lot of them are. A lot of these people, they love these guns. They want people to look at them, and they want people to fear them because they have guns. And my thing is that where were you in 2004, 2005 when we were bogged down in Iraq and we needed people? Where were you? Because back then you didn't want to pick up a rifle and man a post. But back here on the civilian side, if it means you can run around Subway and scare people while they're getting their sandwiches made, then you're all about that. A lot of these people are closet cowards.
Yeah. How much of this do you think is, a media culture and a gun fetish culture that created this kid? Because I've got a lot of people going, well, he's just a child, Rich, just a child, Laura, just a kid. His tears were real. How dare LeBron James mock him for those, whatever that was.
His tears are as real as Kavanaugh's tears. He's just sorry he got caught. But these guys in their own heads, they think they are heroes. And the sad thing is that social media is putting them in front of a group of people that will tell them they are. In his own mind, he did something heroic, and there are plenty of equally unbalanced people out there that will back him up on that. I mean, didn't Zimmerman have an auction for his gun? And wasn't there somebody out there that bought it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how screwy we are as a society. So the other question that comes out of this, no matter what happens in this trial, whether he's found guilty or not guilty, this kid's still going to be a hero to some. And if he's found guilty, he's going to be a martyr. And out of that, probably a movement to come. So for me, all of the wrong messages that you could possibly grab from this is what's going to be front and center.
Yeah, I would say, though, the whole thing with Zimmerman is that destroyed his life. I mean, the guy may have been innocent, but he can't get a job. He can't, people are just completely tearing him apart. Nobody wants to hire him because they're afraid of him. He's very, very clearly a racist. He didn't, this wasn't just like he shot an unarmed brown kid. He then went on, talk shows and everything else and was a clear racist ass. So this is where we are now.
Yeah, the difference is this is a chubby cheek, kid, white kid, all American white kid. I see money flowing into him. Some $2 million put up his bail. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Rich?
Well, let me tell you, this is what bothers me is that, and he can sit on that stand and he can cry crocodile tears while he looks out the left and sees what the jury is looking at. But at the end of the day, he's crying crocodile tears now to try to come off like he's not a bad person. But you got plenty of videos of him inside of a bar with a bunch of white supremacists wearing a shirt that says free as you know what. And of course, imagine the families of those who lost their loved ones watching photographs of this guy out there laughing it up, having a good time, underage drinking in bars with a bunch of racist jackaloons. That's the true Kyle Rittenhouse right there.
Yeah.
Not what's crying on the stand. The true Kyle Rittenhouse is the one who's laughing about it. Yeah. And hopefully we're going to see justice served. But the truth is, you and I both know the deck is not stacked against him right now.
And now I look at what's going on down in Georgia with this Ahmaud Arbery trial, which isn't getting anywhere near the same kind of coverage. And I think partially, one, because it's a black guy who got killed, but two, I think these guys are going away. I think they're guilty and they're going to be found guilty as you know what. And I don't think there's any doubt that they're going to be found guilty, which is why I don't think that it's getting as much coverage. But what do you guys think?
No, it should be getting more coverage. But one of the crazy things that happened on Thursday was that the prosecutor started talking about how he didn't like that there were black pastors in the courtroom. The thing about this community is it's 55% African American. This is an incredibly rich, cultured community. And so all of these people of color who are elected officials are in the courtroom. You've got city council members and school board members. And yes, all of these black pastors, including Al Sharpton. And so when the prosecutor started standing up and saying, I see Al Sharpton in here, and I don't want any more of those black pastors in here because I think it's prejudicing the jury here. And the judge, what was interesting is the guy then started to go off and compare it to people wearing masks of Colonel Sanders. And finally the judge was like, okay, stop. You're hurting yourself here.
Yeah, stop digging.
You're destroying. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is the kind of trial that they have going on there. And even though the jury is all white except for one dude. That's the part that makes me a little worried.
And that's what's really messed up, is because, like you said, 55% of that county is of color, and yet they couldn't find. It's 11 to 1 white. I mean, and that's the thing. You know what? At the end of the day, all they got to do is convince one. And once again, when you have 11 white people on there in an area that's 55% black, I mean, and we all know that racism exists. Racism exists, and that's why they're in that courtroom in the first place, because of racism. But I'll tell you right now, when it comes to the courts and when it comes to trials like this, I always have to protect yourself for the conclusion that you're not going to like.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, I think Rittenhouse will be found not guilty. I think the two guys in the Arbery case will be found guilty. I fear that there's going to be chaos, but I also fear that no matter what I do coming this day going forward, if you get into an argument with somebody, you may have to shoot them just to protect yourself. As the old man always told me, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Maybe this is the world we live in. I got to take a quick break right here. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about the infrastructure bill that President Biden is going to be signing on Monday. So stick around. We're right back after this. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day workers at International Harvester went out on strike. At the time, it was the UAW's longest strike. 35,000 UAW members at 21 plants in 8 states downed their tools. For 172 days, Harvester workers walked the picket lines over seniority rights and forced overtime. They had long resisted mandatory overtime rules. Workers at Harvester were the only UAW members anywhere who still enjoyed the 8-hour day, 5-day work week. They had no intention of giving that up, especially in the industrial downturn of the period that threw over 100,000 auto workers out of their jobs. Harvester argued the company had lost $1.3 billion in recent years because of work rules. The company hoped to force a concessionary contract. But 6 weeks into the strike, the company announced a 98% increase in profits for the year. 3 months into the strike, Harvester hinted it would drop its demand for forced overtime in exchange for part-time hires that would be non-union. The company also hoped to do away with seniority rights in job bidding. Despite injunctions that limited picket lines, strikers were able to minimize scabbing and shipments in and out of many plants. At a plant just outside Chicago, striking Local 6 members marched outside company offices with a burning effigy of hated Harvester president Archie McCardle, chanting "No forced overtime." Victory finally came in April. Harvester workers stood tough for months against company attacks in a period of massive plant and mill closures across the country. They secured seniority rights in job bidding and beat back attacks against mandatory overtime. As for McCardle, brought in to slash and burn the union workforce, he was fired.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the infrastructure bill is going to be signed on Monday. That's a good thing. Hopefully we get this stuff out the door moving quickly. And what I love is the response. The response from the Republicans is not, oh, hey, we had 13 Republicans in the House and 19 in the Senate who said, yeah, we want better roads and bridges. And yes, we want a better future for our children. We want clean drinking water and good broadband access and all of the things that are coming out of this. No. What we got infrastructure equals communism. Those commie roads. Just insane. And you go, Marjorie Trader Green and her nonsense. She's not the only one. You got Boebert and the rest of them who are just flipping nuts. And here to share some thoughts on just how crazy they are, our all-star panel of Rich Ojeda from No Devils Left Behind, Sarah Burris, RawStory, and Laura Packard of Healthcare Voters. Guys, I appreciate you sticking around, taking some time.
Yeah.
So infrastructure, Laura, infrastructure equals communism.
I had no idea that every day I was facing the unbridled tyranny of roads. I little did I know that I might as well have been waving a communist flag. But one thing I think is important to point out is that so few Republicans even voted for roads and bridges, things that Republicans use too. And you see people like Lauren Boebert, Colorado's embarrassment. She's parading around in a dress that says, "Let's go Brandon" on her butt, but she's got nothing to say for things that people care about, like healthcare.
Yeah. And on Veterans Day, she took a shot at veterans too, right?
Yeah, a video came out on Veterans Day where she was speaking in front of a group, and she said that it isn't her role to keep them healthy, but if it was, she would make sure they had gym memberships.
Rich, you want to jump in on gym memberships for veterans?
Well, first off, I want to say that I'm very proud of the fact that she was able to do the spelling correctly on the back of that dress. So we got to give her credit where credit is due. Seeing her come out and say something like that in reference to veterans, it's to me, I expect that of someone like her. So, but I'm going to tell you, when we're talking about the infrastructure package, and we're talking about the people like the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Lauren Boeberts, make no mistake about it. Mark my words, you are going to see every one of those who voted no in all of the ribbon cutting ceremonies and all of the photo ops trying to take credit for the things that they voted against. And that is a problem. I'll be honest with you. In a perfect world, the way it should go is that if you vote no for roads, bridges, broadband, and things like that, then your district should not get nothing from you. Because that's exactly the way they play it. They're going to show up out there and act like they're going to take credit for everything when they obstructed every single thing that they possibly could.
Yeah.
And that is a problem that we have in this country, and we should fix it by doing just that. Because then, think about that. But Marjorie Trainwreck Greene has given out the phone numbers and of all of the Republicans who voted for infrastructure, and now they're receiving death threats and things like that. Marjorie Trainwreck Greene needs to be absolutely removed from Congress. Gosser, removed from Congress. These people are absolutely the worst of the worst, and the mere fact that they remain in their positions is absolutely scary.
No, I'm right there with you. But the part that gets me, and I'm with you, if you didn't vote for it, you shouldn't get anything. No bacon for you. But here's the problem. This infrastructure bill, overwhelmingly, as I'm looking at it, benefits rural communities that these people come from. So the very people who are telling you that they don't believe in government, don't want government, hate government, are the ones who are going to benefit from this, Rich.
Red rural districts are going to get more money than anywhere else. West Virginia, we're 50th out of 50th in infrastructure. Roads, bridges. Southern West Virginia, the kids where I'm from have to go sit in a McDonald's parking lot to get any daggone Wi-Fi. So this is going to be huge for West Virginia. But sad thing is I can go around and I can't find nobody that supports Democrats. Everybody around here claims to be poor Republicans, which is an oxymoron, by the way, because poor and Republican don't go together. But they don't know that. And once again, I hate to say it, but that's one of the things that Donald Trump was able to do. He was able to tap into the poorly educated and convince them that he was one of them. Yeah. Sad.
It is sad. This is like a pathetic, show that we're running over and over and over again. And I'm so frustrated with Democrats for not getting out on this and talking about all of the things that are in the bill. And I think it was Al Franken who was tweeting about the bill, and he remembered whenever he first came into the Senate, and there was a new highway that he was, doing the opening for with Amy Klobuchar and then one of the members of Congress from the district, but the member of Congress hadn't voted for the project. And so Amy Klobuchar got up there and spoke, and then Franken got up there and he goes, I really can't take credit for this because I wasn't in the Senate whenever we voted on it. So I really want to thank everybody, all of the leaders here who did vote for this bill, Amy Klobuchar, and Congressman, oh, wait, you didn't vote for it. And I think that's what every Democrat needs to do. Every one of these, ribbon cuttings and shovel ceremonies, that's what every Democrat needs to do, is say, it's interesting. I supported this, but it looks like you never did. Why are you here?
Hey, there you go. So show up, have other politicians show up in their district saying, look what we brought you, not him.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think too, look at Oklahoma. We have crumbling sewage systems, sewage pipes that were made of clay 100 years ago that are falling apart. That is all going to get fixed. We have lead pipes that are going to get fixed, rural internet, all of these things. I would love to see, some of the Democrats in Congress that are from other states come into Oklahoma for some of this stuff and start talking about it. But again, this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I will tell you that Alex Mooney was one of the ones that were voting against everything concerning the infrastructure for the, COVID shots. But the very next day, he's down here in Charleston, West Virginia, at a clinic that's giving out the COVID vaccines, and he's taking photographs with all the people. And once again, it's like you didn't even vote for this, but yet you're going to come down here and you're going to act like you participated in making this happen. But once again, the Republicans, they don't care. There is no bottom to as low as they'll go.
Yeah. Now,
there's no consequences, just like what we were talking about earlier with Kyle Rittenhouse. There may be no consequences there either. There may be no consequences with Paul Gosar threatening to kill, threatening to have a coworker assassinated, but they don't pay any price.
No, and that's the sad thing about all this. And now the hard infrastructure bill is passed. It'll be signed, I believe, on Monday is what they're saying. Big ceremony, all that, and the rollout hopefully is quick so that we get some of this money moving and some of these shovel-ready projects happening. The concern now is, and my view from the beginning, I think a lot of people and maybe everyone here, is if we get the hard stuff, we're not going to get the soft stuff. The Build Back Better plan I view as dead in the water. But hey, maybe it's possible that something comes out of it. Let's start with you, Laura. Do you see something in the Build Back Better plan coming through? Maybe something on the healthcare front. What do you see?
Well, to get this infrastructure bill passed, some of the moderates in the House promised a vote the week of the 15th on Build Back Better. So that's coming. That's coming very soon. It'll be the week of the 15th. And then we'll see. I think this is too popular. This is too important to leave out, because what good are bridges and roads if nobody can afford to be on them, can afford to go see their doctor or have the childcare to even use your roads and bridges?
No, there's a point, but here's the thing. I look at this Republican billionaire, this Ken Langhorne guy, or Langone, I guess his name is. He said on Squawk Box this week, Rich, that he's a big mansion guy. He said, I don't see any leadership in this country. Thank God for Joe Manchin. He said, I'm going to have one of the biggest fundraisers I've ever had for him. He's special. He's precious. He's a great American, Rich.
Well, Joe Manchin has showed everybody else exactly his true colors. Joe Manchin's two-faced as you can get, and Joe Manchin will crawl in bed with anybody willing to write a check. And that's where we're at right now. I'll tell you right now, we need this, and understand that the Republicans, they're absolutely going to do everything in their power to make sure that we don't have this victory, because this is a big victory if we can get it. And if we can get it, it's something that takes us into 2022 with a feather in our cap. And that's not what the Republicans want. I'll be honest with you. I am impressed that we got the infrastructure, package passed that recently just passed, because I was thinking that we wasn't going to get anything. So I'm glad that we got that. And just like Laura said, I'm kind of hoping that everybody realizes that this is too big to allow it to die. I'm hoping the Republicans realize that if they kill it, it's gonna come back against them, and not in their favor.
Yeah,
One thing I want to say about Joe Manchin is one of his biggest complaints about the Build Back Better is, and I would say that he specifically singled out the child tax care credit, which everyone loves. I mean, like everyone across the board, both parties, parents, everybody loves the child tax credit. And Manchin, I swear to you, said that he didn't like it because he thought that it would build dependency. Well, a new study came out on Thursday that said that just that little bit of money would enable tons and tons of women to be able to go into the workforce who couldn't go into the workforce now. That just that little bit is able to help them get out of the house and away from their kids, thank God, to go, make some money of their own and have their own job and build their own career. And again, like, this is Joe Manchin being so far removed from the facts and from what his own people really want and need, that, he's opposing all of these things based on ridiculous data that he's just making up or bringing back from the 1980s Ronald Reagan talking points.
Yeah, I think making up is the right way to put it. For me, in the Build Back Better plan, there's a bunch of stuff in there that I think we need. The health care, the child care. I know they took the college out. There's got to be some of that. But, more importantly, we got to start taxing some of these billionaires to pay for the things that we need. And I saw the story this week that Elon Musk tweeted out, should I sell some of my stocks so I can pay taxes? Yes. And I guess he sold about $5 billion worth of stocks. The tweet alone is the reason we need to have a much different tax system, to where we're taxing the kind of wealth that is just unimaginable when you look at our billionaire class. Just that alone, to me, says we need something on the tax front.
$36 billion in one day Elon Musk made. Look, I don't care. I want these people to pay their fair share. I don't care if he says, well, I only have stock. Sell your stock. I don't care. But at the end of the day, it's time for these people to pay their fair share, because it's always been placed on the backs of the middle class. And the middle class has been disappearing for quite some time. They've went after unions. I mean, it is what it is. That's what's happening in this country. It's going to get to the point where we have the filthy rich and the dirt poor. And I'm thinking to myself, are we going to let it get to that point to where we're going to have to eat the rich, before we do something about this? But that's where we're at. And I'll tell you right now, I want to see Elon Musk. I want to see Zuckerberg. I want to see Bezos. I want to see Richard Branson. Once again, we know there's no such thing as trickle-down economics, because when their cup runneth over, they have a saucer underneath to catch it all, so they can build bigger homes, nicer boats, and go to space.
One of the things I'd love to see is if these all of these bills that are in Build Back Better, particularly the piece that would pay for all of it, if Republicans end up voting against it and killing it, and if the moderate Dems vote against it and kill it, I think we should just break it into individual pieces and then make all of these people vote against. Yeah, I don't want to raise taxes on the rich. Yeah, I don't want to fund the IRL so that they actually can do their job and get people who already owe us money to actually pay the money. Like, I think Elon Musk owes like $15 billion in unpaid taxes for some like weird thing that he avoided paying for, and now he's going to actually pay for it. I mean, there's so much money out there. We could pay down the national debt. But again, Republicans don't actually want to do that. They just want to complain about it.
But you got to understand this, Sarah, and this is a problem on the state level and the national level. If we could run a bill specifically for one thing, we want to say that all the children are going to continue getting this. Problem is that when they see a bill like that and they don't want it to last, they go in and they put more stuff in it. That's how come a bill isn't daggone 10 pages. A bill becomes 1,000 pages because they got to go in there and they got to stick stuff in. And once again, that's what they do. And sometimes they do it specifically to kill good bills.
Yeah, you got to poison pill it.
Well, also, I think we'd run into problems in the Senate because they still have not gotten rid of the filibuster. So you could get a vote in the House and then it would just go over the Senate to die.
Yep. Yeah, and that's my fear.
Let them vote against cloture, though. Like, go for it.
Yeah, that's my fear with this Build Back Better plan. That the easy part was the bipartisan plan. It'll be interesting to see where this plays out. Last question I've got for you. Everyone's hair is on fire over inflation. I keep hearing that the sky is falling. It's the 1970s again. What are you guys hearing, Laura? Let me start with you.
Well, I mean, my grocery bills are higher. So, I mean, it's a thing. It's a real thing that we need to do something about. But I don't know how long-term a problem this is really going to be, because, I mean, we stopped our economy. Our economy came to a halt during the pandemic. And as we start things up, then there's issues with the ports being jammed up with goods because all the stuff is being shipped that wasn't before, and the flip side of people finally having some power in their workplace, being able to unionize, being able to leave crappy McJobs, is that there are all these McJobs unfilled. And it's going to be a while before the people at the top recognize that they have to treat their people decently and pay them in order to get good help.
No, Buffalo is the perfect example with Starbucks. Have you been following this Starbucks story out of Buffalo, where they literally brought executives in to come sweep the floor and do the job because they're now partners. They had a meeting at a ritzy hotel where they brought people out, and then they made a real slick video and through some emergency channel. They're pulling out every stop possible. And my mind was, had you treated people as partners, a year ago, 2 years ago, you wouldn't be in this mess. The reason that they don't trust you is they don't trust you.
Yeah, this is exactly what workers should be fighting for. And I'm glad to see that the guys in Buffalo are fighting for a union. You're starting to see that not just in Buffalo, but all over the country. You've got Amazon workers. You've got, everybody is really fighting for a union. I would hope that the Netflix guys, after the whole trans incident, I think the Netflix guys are talking about, why they need a union, just so they can actually have some respect from their CEO, right?
Yeah.
The thing about inflation is that on Thursday we got new numbers from China and Germany that showed that they've got over 30% inflation too. So this is not an isolated American incident that was caused by Joe Biden, right? Like, this is something that happened. Laura's right. As a result of the pandemic, we have booked up ports that can't deliver our stuff, but we also have a whole bunch of truck drivers that aren't on the job anymore. So we have to hire more truck drivers and actually get them to the ports to pick up the goods to then bring them back to the rest of the country. And there's actually a shortage of people to help unload all of the containers that are being unloaded from the ships. So there is literally a block at every single spot in the supply chain. And that's why it's not just happening in the United States, it's happening across the world. Right. And this idea that it's because of Joe Biden, the guy's been in office for 9 months. You don't have enough power to destroy the entire world in 9 months. So Donald Trump really tried.
Look, you're right. The ports are backed up. And for me, this is an excellent opportunity to reshore our manufacturing so we don't end up in this situation again. And on the truckers' part, I see, there are trucks lined up waiting for the loads to come off. It's that everything's just so jammed up. It's going to take time, and we're going to have to get through it. I want to take a quick break right here. On the other side, going to talk a little bit about a new university popping up. One that's going to have free thought, one that's going to teach forbidden courses. Oh, the fun. Oh, the excitement. Going to take a quick break right here, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day that Louis Ling died in prison while awaiting execution for his alleged role in a bombing at a workers' rally at Haymarket Square in Chicago the year before. Louis was born in Germany. His father worked for a lumber mill. One day, while trying to clear a log jam, his father fell into an icy river. Although Louis's father lived, he could no longer carry the same workload. The company fired him despite his 20 years of service. Louis began to question a labor system that would let this happen. He became a carpenter's apprentice. Louis then traveled to Switzerland, where he became acquainted with anarchist worker groups. Finally, in 1885, Louis made his way to the United States and Chicago. There he joined the Carpenters and Joiners Union. He became an outspoken advocate for the cause of the 8-hour workday. The movement had great success in Chicago, and on May 1st, or May Day, thousands marched in the streets for the 8-hour cause. When a bomb was thrown at a workers' rally 3 days later, the backlash against the labor movement was swift and brutal. 8 men, including Louis Ling, stood trial and were convicted despite a lack of evidence tying them to the bombing. Louis Ling and 4 others were sentenced to death by hanging. But the day before the sentence was to be carried out, Louis lit a cigar in his prison cell. The cigar was packed with explosives. The explosion left Louis in agony for hours before he finally died. Some believe he committed suicide rather than die at the hands of the legal system. Others believe he was murdered.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this week, a new university launched. Evidently, according to their tweet, they can't wait for the university system to fix itself. So they are going to build a university dedicated to, quote, the fearless pursuit of truth. That's right, truth. They're also going to teach forbidden courses in 2022. This is their words, not mine. There will be a suite of forbidden courses. Don't know what that means. I'm sure it's going to be every racist, homophobic, misogynistic kind of course you can imagine. But this is what they're going. Now, they've chosen Austin, Texas. This is the University of Austin in Texas. They've chosen Austin, Texas. And I'll tell you, I thought the reason was because, it's near the University of Texas in Austin. Austin's a fairly liberal place. This is where the academic debate would be. You're going to go head toe-to-toe intellectually with the liberals. No. They chose Austin because they like Joe Rogan and SpaceX billionaire Elon Musk. That's the reason. I cannot wait to find out what the forbidden courses are. Here to share some thoughts on maybe what are the forbidden courses, our all-star panel, Rich Ojeda, Sarah Burris, and Laura Packard. Guys, thanks for taking time for us.
Everyone.
So, forbidden courses. What could forbidden courses mean?
Well, Hallie, you were talking about Texas. I thought a forbidden course was critical race theory.
Oh, no.
I think this is gonna end up becoming QAnon University, is what it's gonna end up being.
But
it should be like Liberty. You don't actually get they're not accredited at Liberty University, are they?
Oh yeah. They get
Liberty
tons
gives
of money.
you a degree.
Oh, they get tons of money from the federal government. They're one of the biggest suckers of the GI Bill in this country. They have figured out how to get into the government teat and suck it dry while constantly pointing its finger back at it, saying you're bad, but give us more money.
So
yeah, and Liberty University is not.
They're not going to give you a degree, right?
No, Liberty University will give you a degree, but this is not. This is Trump University 2.0. You get a shiny piece of paper and maybe you get a free Trump steak, but you don't get something useful.
So basically, go in debt probably for the next 20 to 30 years, so that you don't even get a degree. That right there alone. The people that are enrolling in this obviously right from the start showed that they're not that bright.
But this is what this is about. This is about propagandizing. This is about taking education and I love what Glenn Youngkin said on election night. We don't want to teach children what to think. We want to teach them how to think. Well, this is teaching them how to think about what you want them to think about. That's what this is. And under the guise of, we're fighting back against the woke crowd. We're fighting back against political correctness because, hey, we've got forbidden courses. And what could be more alluring than I've got forbidden courses?
That's so absurd. What's interesting is I remember being in college and a state senator in Kansas losing her ever-loved mind because there was a professor at KU who taught a sex class, like what was it? It was like human sexuality in everyday life. And and she lost her mind over it because they were showing pictures of vaginas. And I mean, you think about all of those are the kind of courses that right wingers are fighting against. They've done this for a long time, and yet, you know, now they're saying that they're the victims. They're the ones who are like, oh, we want to teach, you know, all of these forbidden things. Well, you've got all these universities where you can teach these forbidden things. You've been doing it for years.
And been funding all of them.
Well, we have people that do not want to teach the real history in our schools, but yet you're going to see something like this pop up, where I can guarantee you that if this actually comes to fruition and they start teaching classes, I can guarantee you that every single class that they teach is going to be absolutely something that the average person is going to be like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? You're teaching this?
I hope you're right. My fear in this is this becomes the catalyst for the next crazy insurrectionist conservative movement, and we're even further off the deep end fringe of having a whole segment of people like Ben Shapiro running around like drug-addled rats, trying to make a point and having everything off of a script to read from. For me, this is about taking young minds and turning them into the next Kyle Rittenhouse or the next who knows what.
Yeah, like a sports class is going to be a shooting class, and you'll have like Herman Cain cooking 101 or right, like it's just going to be a bunch of nonsense.
Now the worst part of this is Now, the worst part of this we saw in Texas. You've got that state representative who had a list of 850 books that he wanted to know if they were on the shelves of the schools. We're already hearing the talks of banning books in Texas and Virginia. And I've even heard whispers of we should start burning these books, guys. So we're back to book burnings.
Yep. 1953. Let's go.
I thought they used to teach Fahrenheit 451 in the classes. I didn't think they were using it as a manual.
That they are. Now, here's the weird thing, though. We're in this moment, and this is where I think there's a fight for the soul of this country. And I've been calling for Democrats and liberals and progressives to find a picket line, adopt a striker, and take a master's working class economics course by talking to some of these striking workers. Because as I've been saying for a while, the working class is the largest multicultural coalition on this planet. And if we're going to fight back against that kind of crazy, we've got to consolidate some thought in the working class that we're in this together and fighting the righteous fight for better wages, hours, and conditions, while the fringe on the right is losing their mind. But I'm looking at this moment kind of worried.
I'm actually not. I'm not heartened by this idea that a whole new generation of young people is discovering unionization and fighting back against crappy employers. I do think that everybody needs to be helping every picket line worker and stepping up and doing what you can. But there is now I'm proud to see my generation and the one after us, Gen Z, looking at things from a more global and empathetic perspective. And, that's not something that you saw whenever I was young.
Yeah. There's a new report out by a guy named Richard Martin. He did this for the American Family Voices group and 21st Century Democrats, and it's called Factory Town. And his report basically goes through the fact that we've abandoned, small communities. We've abandoned rural areas, especially those factory towns that, because of bad trade policies, because of corporate greed and outsourcing, have been left behind and are now nothing more than hollow shells of what they used to be. And their argument is, look, you got to get into these places and you've got to talk to people. And this does not seem to be where the Democratic Party is right now. And I know, Rich, your group, No Dems Left Behind, are one of those groups out there trying to get into these areas and talk to these people, because this is where the fight is, in my view. Leave the idiots and the cretins who are at Start University of Austin. Leave them to be. We've got work to do.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And what really hurts the most is that when you realize that the party that you're out here fighting for aren't supporting you. We're out here trying to find good candidates to take on the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Trainwreck Greens. And, it's hard when you can't get the support from your party. I mean, we're out here doing everything in our power to try to increase the power that we have in the Senate and the House. I want to take away the power from Sinema and Manchin, and we can do that by adding more Democrat senators, to the Senate. But it'd be nice if we could get some support, but we're pretty much on our own.
Now, Laura, I know you're from somewhat of a rural area. You look at these stories and you go, yeah, this is stuff we've known for decades. This is not news. The question is how do you get to this point to where we end up going back into these communities and making a difference? Is the Build Back Better plan part of that? Will this hard infrastructure bill help that? I'm curious your thoughts.
I grew up in a suburb of Detroit on a dirt road. We didn't have cable because cable didn't come to our house. So the internet, I think, levels the playing field for a lot of people, that even in the most rural areas, you may not get very fast. You may not have broadband. It may be dial up or satellite, but everyone has some degree of access to information. But the problem is that newspapers have been gutted and trusted sources of news have been gutted. And people are angry and confused when your income has stayed flat for decades and there is no future where you live. And so Republicans are speaking to those people and offering hate. And Democrats need to speak to those people too and offer hope. And not only just offer hope, but they need to do something about it, because everybody that's in Congress right now ran on doing something about healthcare costs and prescription drugs and so on. And this is the point at which they need to deliver, or nobody will trust a word they say next time.
No, absolutely. Sarah, your thoughts?
I wish that nobody would trust them next time, but I'm worried that these people, who vote in a lot of these areas just aren't paying the kind of attention that I wish they would. And some rural areas, like, I just see it over and over and over again. This is what's the matter with Kansas is about, is it's an entire group of people who vote against their own economic interest over and over and over again. They keep supporting Republicans who vote for school consolidation, who are the ones who shut down their community hospitals. They don't understand that, Obama was the one who was saving community hospitals. Obamacare was the one who was keeping places open so that you don't have to drive like 2 hours just to give birth. There's so much that Democrats are bringing to folks in these areas. Nobody's talking to them. And so there's a void in that. But then there's also, just outright lies from Republicans to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what, though? What Laura said, though, I mean, they know this is the perfect time to come in and start, stoking the fires with hatred. Tell these people you don't have anything because of Joe Biden. And at the end of the day, a lot of these people fall for it. I'll tell you, I walked out of the Walmart today and I see a car that has a F Joe Biden, the whole back of it. And, this person struggles, but of course they believe that all of their woes are coming from somebody that's only been in president for 10 months.
Yeah. Last thing I want to get to, and Laura, this is the moment where it's open enrollment period for the ACA. Give the spiel for this moment in time. How do we sign up? What can people do? What's going on?
Yes. So this is open enrollment time. Whether you have your insurance through your employer or Medicare or the ACA, take a look at your plans and sign up for next year. The deadline for the ACA is January 15th. But if you want coverage starting in January, then the deadline for most states is December 15th. So you should go to healthcare.gov and look through your options today. And if you have questions about healthcare and health insurance, I have a new show on Mondays at 4:00 Eastern where we tackle your healthcare questions and we give you answers from experts.
Good stuff. And if the website again was?
ACT.tv. So if you look for ACT.tv on social media, on YouTube, on Roku, 4:00 Eastern on Mondays.
And now is the open enrollment period. Make sure you check out that. And it's still healthcare.gov, right?
Yes.
Trump didn't get to destroy that completely. We're still doing that, right?
He tried. He failed.
Good stuff. Guys, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you. I hope you'll come back again next week. Rich Ojeda from No Dems Left Behind. Make sure you check out the work that they do. Sarah Burris, reporter over at RawStory, and Laura Packard from Healthcare Voters. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate the time.
Have a good weekend.
Again, if you have any thoughts, any comments, any questions, things that came up during this show, let me know. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If there are topics you want to hear discussed, debated, let me know as well. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter @RickSmithShow. Do the Facebook thing. We're there as well. YouTube, subscribe, like, all of that. We're everywhere and then some. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.